A very warm welcome to all of you from me as well. My name is Amy Lightfoot, and I'm one of the assistant directors working here at the British Council. I lead on the academic side of our teacher education projects and programs that we do. So today we've got a fantastic panel, and we're going to be looking at trying to answer the question of what makes effective teacher education. I'm going to introduce you to our speakers in a moment. But before I do, I just want to check that you all received a piece of paper. I can see many of you have it, which just explains how we're going to do the Q&A session at the end of the panel discussion. So we're trying something new. We hope it's going to work. If you use your phones to log on, we've given you the Wi-Fi code. And you go into Slido, sli.do, and you'll be able to enter your questions and comments there as we carry on through the session. And what I can do on my screen here is I can see those questions as they come up. So as I'm seeing things come up, I'm going to try and feed them into the discussion. And we'll see if we can at least try to cover the most popular questions by the end of the session today. If it doesn't work and it stops playing, then we will revert to sending a microphone around. So let's see how we get on with that. We're all trying something new. OK, and also just to say, we'll be using Twitter as well, and the hashtag is #TEPH, TEF. OK, so as Alan mentioned, tonight we're launching the Teacher Education Planning Handbook, and a key theme of that is how we need to work together. And by working together, we can really achieve greater impact for the teachers and the learners that we're trying to improve the teaching and learning for. So with our panel, what we've tried to do is to get representatives from different stakeholder groups who are working in teacher education. So I'll just introduce you. To my right, we have Mr. Sanjay Awathi, who is the Member Secretary for the National Council for Teacher Education since May 2016. We have Professor Rama Mathew, formerly from the Centre for, from the Delhi University. Sorry, Rama. We also have Ms. Kalpana Maheshwari, who's the head teacher at a secondary school in Chennai. Ramachandra, who is the Joint Commissioner for Academics in the Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti. And Ms. Menon, who's the founder director of the Teacher Foundation based in Bangalore. Now, just before I give you a chance to start speaking, I thought we could just find out who we have in our audience in front of us as well, so that we know who we're talking to. So can I just have a show of hands to see how many of you work directly in teacher education? You just raise your hand. OK, that's almost everybody. OK. Can I have another show of hands to see how many of you work in the government sector? OK, about half. Another show of hands. How many of you work in the private not-for-profit sector? OK, a few. And anyone working in the private commercial sector? OK. How many of you are teachers? OK, good. And teacher educators, you can have more than one role, by the way. You don't have to stick to just one. OK, teacher educators. I've got the video showing on the screen here. Could you pause that? Thank you. How many of you are head teachers? One or two? Sorry, we've still got the video showing. Can you pause it? Thank you. And how many of you, any university academics that we have here? OK. Anyone working in program management, administrators working on project management? OK, so a few people are like, maybe, I'm not sure. OK, all right, I'm going to hand over to you now. And I'd just like to ask you the first question, which is looking at the role that you see that you have and your responsibilities around the field of teacher education. So Kalpana, we're going to start with you.
Good evening, friends. My role is to create interesting learning environment in my school with the help of my team members, teachers. So I definitely need teacher education, continuing professional development, without which I cannot expect my teachers to use modern technologies, innovative methods in their classrooms, and make their teaching learning process interesting. So I'm completely for teacher education, maximum number of days in a year.
Thank you. Rama?
I started as a teacher in a school long ago, and I became a teacher educator, and ever since I've been a teacher educator, some 30 odd years. And while I have been engaged in pre-service education, teacher education, I have got sustenance and motivation from doing a lot of in-service teacher education, working very closely with teachers. I think when teachers do engage in ongoing professional development, that gives me motivation. And I do my own action research that way, and then that's what has kept me going. And I think I consider that very important.
Thank you. Ramachandra.
I come from a residential system of schools run by the government. My role basically is to generate the peer group learning, because by design we are in the remote rural areas, and I do head the Department of Academics, generating a lot of trainings. We do have in-service training programs. On an average, we account that at least one teacher is out from the school for one or the other type of the training. Out from the school in the sense from the academic activities. I am deeply engrossed in the teacher training programs, in-service programs, roughly around 60 days in a year. My time is reserved for that.
Thank you. Mr. Awathi.
Namaskar. I come from the National Council for Teacher Education. We are almost going to be 22 years old now, a statutory body looking after to regulate the teacher education sector. That is one of the primary functions which is statutorily bestowed on us. Apart from that, we are also now focusing heavily on in-service training and looking after the quality aspect, which I think as we go along, there would be queries and probably some embarrassing queries also. Thank you.
Thank you. And Maya.
I began my career as a higher secondary school teacher, and I was there for about 9 years. And then I started work, so I was in the classroom. Then I worked outside the school system, but working with schools and students for about 7 years. And for the last 21 years, I've been working in the area of teacher development for teachers as well as head teachers, looking at providing coaching, mentoring, and professional development services as part of the Teacher Foundation.
Thank you very much.
If I may just add, I think my role as far as teacher education is concerned is I think we endeavor to try and provide different sort of learning opportunities for teachers, so that that's something they can replicate in their classroom, because teachers teach the way they have been taught, and if you want to change the way teachers teach, they have to learn in different ways. So I think that's where I see my role.
Thank you. And we'll come back to that point in a bit, because I think it's a really important one. Now, you'll notice that with our panel, we've got a good range of different stakeholder voices, but one of the voices that we haven't got as clearly represented here, although we were discussing earlier that, in fact, we all started our careers as teachers, I think, and we have many teachers in the audience. So we wanted to try and find a way to bring in the voices of teachers to the discussion that we're having today. This is something that we've been trying to do much more and more of in our work. So we've made a short video, which we're going to show you in a moment. We spoke to 10 teachers based in government schools in Delhi, talking about what makes effective teacher education, the things that are working well, and the things that they feel need some development. So we're just going to have that video now.
For me, teacher education, I think, has two aspects. One is pre-service and the second is in-service. Generally, people think that as a teacher, you need to study only before you become a teacher. But in-service teacher education is equally important. until you keep updated yourself constantly, how would you be able to transact the latest methodology in the classroom? Be it content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, understanding of the learners, how to manage my classrooms better. I think all that is part of teacher education.
I think just like learners are being constantly updated by their teachers, similarly teachers are being constantly updated by different agencies. Now, there are different stakeholders in education, the teachers themselves, the administrators, and the people who control and design the workshops.
To me, effective teacher education primarily should concern at enriching the teacher with the current knowledge, the current developments, and the current technologies that are coming up into the way of education. It will also enrich the teacher to apply different methods which he can learn through the training sessions of the teacher.
The programs that I have been involved in have been very useful for me. I have learned the latest technologies and techniques that's happening around, and they have made me evolve as a teacher.
When I come back from a teacher education program, it takes me some time to, incorporate the things that I have been, learning. But, after a certain time, I find my students very forthcoming when they are used to, the methods that I apply. They are able to use collaborative practices. They are quite enthusiastic about certain new things happening in the classroom.
Suppose in the case of government school, normally our training is organized in collaboration with a CERT, right? But those who come as resource persons, maybe they're not so well equipped that they may consider our problem, the things we really face in the classroom.
So what actually required is that these programs should have clear objectives, and they should be of relevance to the teachers and the students both. The real support which should come from the school administration, that is missing. When we have gone through the training, we got to know some different methods which we can use them in the classrooms. The principal and the management of the school, they are not supportive of these, because at times they find that these activities are creating some noise and disturbance in a classroom, and they want complete silence in the class. And I wonder that how can we conduct activities and remain silent at the same time?
During the teacher education programs, the teachers are informed much in advance about when the program is going to be. But then, apart from that, they are not told about the venue, the course content, and these are, I guess, important things, because the teachers, they need to manage their traveling from and to the venue point as well. Plus, they can, they should be able to actually, know and decide what do they want from the teacher education program. The teachers should have the option to select the venue of their training. They should have the option to select the course content. It should not be like, it's not like one size fits everybody.
But here I would like to mention, like last year, we had a list of the course content for the seminars and the training programs. And it had a list of 6 course sessions, and each teacher was asked to select 2 according to his or her needs. That is something which was welcome.
Somehow, somewhere, the teachers should be involved in the policy making. It's not just that, few people sit down and then they decide that this is the design that is going to be there. Why not have a needs analysis first, make the teachers participate in the planning of the, content which is going to be delivered, and then have the program delivered.
I firmly believe that it is not the quantity of the educational programs, it is the quality that matters. And an educational program should not be there for the sake of it.
Teacher education is education that keeps in mind the needs of the teachers. Right? It can't be theoretical only. It has to have a practical component. It has to have hands-on activities that the teacher can directly replicate in the classroom, that she can take back and make her teaching better.
I think actually some of the teachers who featured in the film are here with us this evening. Do you want to just give us a little wave if you're here? Yeah, there they are. Okay, so lots of interesting themes in that film. The panel actually had a sneak preview of the film before we started this evening. And I know we talked about a few things as we were preparing that we would like to discuss. Now, one of the key things that came up was you saw towards the end about choice and about teachers having some say in what they do as part of their teacher education program. And one of the things that we were discussing is that choice, perhaps the way that it's discussed sometimes is about the choice being given to teachers, whereas in fact the choice already exists for those teachers. So, but perhaps they just don't realize it. So I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you was how can we encourage a culture of CPD or continuing professional development within this sector?
Design based on the choices of the teachers is a great aspect. We cannot simply keep on pouring some kind of an idea into the minds of the teachers. Like we have it limited types of focuses, whether it is content enrichment, capacity building, technology orientations, or kind of thought process activities done. The basic premise should be to have the choice of the teachers. Then only a design can be worked out, and that has to be done. For instance, the NCERT has developed 2-3 documents on this, of collecting the design of the rather choices of the teachers, and it also has a practice of developing the design based on the collaborative activity of the teachers. A group of teachers, by layer by layer, they are collected and done. These systems do work in a better way.
I hope it's, yeah. If I may just add to what Mr. Ramachandra was saying, I think if you've got to look at how do you develop a culture of CPD, I think it has to start with pre-service teacher education. When a trainee is training to become a teacher, they need to be exposed to opportunities for developing a career path for themselves after they become qualified teachers. It starts from there because I'll give you an example. Because if otherwise a teacher in the school who's never been exposed to thinking about career paths suddenly is asked, what do you want? They actually can't make the right choices. A case in point was when we recently asked a corporation school in Bangalore, so what do you want? What are the things you would like in terms of, to improve student learning? So they said, if you could come and do some training in English for the students. I said, no, what is it for you, for your for you yourself? They said, maybe you can give us laptops or tablets. So I'm not trying to, put down the teachers. It's just that they don't know they haven't learned how to make choices because they did not get trained at pre-service. I think it needs to start with that, and then they need to be in schools where there is a culture of learning. And then finally, they must have access to authentic multiple modes of teacher development, whether it's face-to-face or online, whether it's peer-directed amongst colleagues in the school, or with specialist support from outside. So then an array of services available, but I think it has to start from the person, the teacher herself, beginning from pre-service days.
Taking off from what you said, Maya, it has to begin at the pre-service level. The idea of thinking that now development is my responsibility, and I want to do something with it. I want to sort of chart out a career path, and then I go about it this way. It's a journey that they will undertake. But having said that, for example, going by my experience of working with many teachers on action research projects, teachers are very interested. They want to volunteer for something extra by way of action research. But then there is no acknowledgement of their initiative or there's no support. Like Kalpana is able to give her teachers, for example, I don't know how many head teachers are here. Now, when head teachers don't support teachers to take up extra work, extra in the sense of, you know, outside their regular classroom teaching, then there's no incentive, there's no motivation. So there are very few teachers who do it in spite of that. So what I'm trying to say is there has to be a system in the school or in the directorate, in SCRT, wherever, where they require teachers to also do some ongoing professional development activities, just like B.Ed is compulsory, just like the ETE or the diploma program for primary teachers is compulsory. I think ongoing professional development activities, engaging in it, should also be required of a teacher. And then it should be incentivized. I think that will make it possible for teachers to sort of, in a way, force them, but then not really force. Because unless, like you said, if you haven't tasted something, how do you know whether it's good or not? So you need to taste professional development while on the pre-service program. You need to taste professional development while you're in your school, and that's the beginning.
Thanks, Rama. So we'll come back to the point there about, I mean, it ties in with evaluation of teacher education as well, doesn't it, and how we can incentivize it. Now, I just wanted to come to you, Kalpana, about the question around support. And we heard in the video of teachers talking about, oh dear, is that me? Not getting enough support from their head teachers, particularly when they've been out doing teacher education, going through programs. How do you manage that in your school that you work in?
Our school is a government school, and we do have two kind of teachers, passionate about learning new methodology and implementing in classroom and sharing it with others. Some teachers are really not ready to learn anything. I have to manage with both the team, and I start with the good teachers. I make the teachers represent their success. So sharing best practices in front of all the teachers twice a month in our formal staff meeting encouraged others to try something in their classrooms. And in 3 years of time, I guess 75% of our school is in fast improvement development, and I'm very glad about that. In the beginning, it was very less, very less. I consulted some educationists, experienced people. They said, concentrate on those teachers who are really good at it. I did that, and I'm happy about the present condition in my school.
Providing that culture of support as well.
Yes.
What about from the policy level?
As a policy maker, also an administrator in this field, the biggest challenge that we are grappling with right now is to get out of the top-down mindset. You see, there was a statement about choice. What exactly is a person wanting to learn? So that kind of, in case somebody sitting in Delhi or somebody sitting in a state capital is to decide what exactly the teacher is supposed to learn, while, you know, that probably is going to not help very much. But in case there is this kind of decentralization where the teacher herself or decides that this is an area where I would like to have more input so that I can transact in the classroom better, then perhaps that is what we are trying to do right now. We are trying to focus on the district level in the country, the diet as the focus of in-service teacher training. A concept paper is already under preparation, I would like to inform. And maybe in a very short while, we are committed to not having a vision which is 10 years when none of us are going to be around to sort of see it happen. I mean, we are going to do it in the next couple of months. So that kind of choice, I believe, is the most important thing, and it should be left to the learner or to somebody who's wanting to be trained to decide what exactly is the training going to be all about.
Thank you. Ramachandra.
Add that I keep asking the trainees who come to us, our own teachers, when does the person become a teacher? The conclusion is that the midway after he gets that designation, in the journey he becomes the teacher. He finds himself as the real teacher. From then on, the development starts. The realization of being a teacher is fed by the system as well as the group of children. They make the teacher realize that he is the teacher. So this aspect is very important when we inculcate the culture of the training inside the system. And as far as a school system is concerned, we also feel, I have seen it happening when the candidates come as teachers, 50%, they come with passion. And the other 50% do not come with that much of a desire and the preparedness to be a teacher. They will always be trying to get out of that scene, find some other job, and go here and there, jump here and there, that kind of a scenario we find. So to translate that, both the system as well as the teachers will have to, rather students do work make a major role.
I just remembered one or two teachers talking about venues, timings, how they should be consulted. Somebody is in control. Now, these are all a little worrying. I was thinking that we are at an age where there are lots and lots of digital materials, resources online, MOOCs, lots of them. In fact, I signed up for one and I was really rejuvenated, just that I couldn't complete it because of lots of other things that I had to do. But then there are so many MOOCs that teachers can sign up for free and do it and learn. So you don't have to, everybody doesn't have to come to a venue. The venue is your computer, and then you are meeting lots and lots of people. So if only some teachers can sort of take that development responsibility into their hands, I think there are lots of resources that are already available, and I want to say that they're high-quality resources. There are so many videos you can learn it from, and then there are ever so many things to read about, things to discuss, and so on. So I feel that with your mobile phone, all of us have mobile phones. You don't need to even go to a computer anymore. So I think the digital thing is the way to go. You don't need a physical space and the same time to meet and discuss. And of course, it has its advantages. It could be maybe 20% of the time, but 80% of the time, I think you can do it and be online with your. If you can do go on social networking or messaging and so on, why not for CPD? So I think.
Do you find that the teachers in your school access opportunities that are digitally available? Is it something that teachers are aware of and able to use?
I have a good story about this.
Okay.
Actually, I insisted my teachers to create email ID so that I can connect with you anytime, and even the documents I read, interesting documents I read, I can share with you. But it took 1 year for me to achieve this, but a very young fellow, Teach for India fellow, is in my school. He is all the time with the teachers, right? He insisted teachers, and he made it happen in a month's time. So I'm very happy about my teacher, and now they have a WhatsApp group, with me one group, without me another group. Interesting things happening in my school, and we introduce technology for the students too. They start learning Khan Academy videos, and with headsets, they do personalized learning too. So teachers guide them. Teachers too learn in the computer lab. It's really good to see that. Thank you.
So just back to Rama's point, and then I'll come to you, Maya. Just you were saying about the plethora of resources that's available online and all the different things. And I think one of the challenges that we found is that teachers find it difficult to navigate all the different things that are available and to know what is high quality and what is stuff that that isn't worth spending time on. So I think my question is, how do we help teachers to develop those kinds of skills that are also important, as well as skills for the classroom and their subject knowledge? How can we help to develop those as well?
This is an extremely relevant point for our times right now. You see, a little bit of the pain of training would be the kind of, dislocation for maybe 10 days or 5 days, going to a place, staying there. And I'm talking of a very decentralized kind of model, maybe district level, state level kind of thing. So the way forward is most certainly a blended format where there is a little bit of face-to-face contact, because that is absolutely important. But a lot of learning can happen during the course of that module through a online system. Now, this is where maybe I may have some challenges on this point, but the government has to take the lead in terms of what was being mentioned as you have so much of material available on the net that the moment you do a Google search probably on anything and you end up with 1 million hits, and you don't know how or where to sort of, what exactly is relevant and what is not. So government is doing something about it. NCT is doing something about it. And we already have a lot of, NCRT has its own platform, many other agencies. But we are going to concentrate on something which is going to host absolutely world-class material, which a teacher can absolutely use. And not only that, something on the pattern of Khan Academy, we are already developing, which would give insights into, the classroom transactions, the pedagogical skills, classroom management, a number of those things, probably in a couple of months' time. So my belief is that government will show the way in this regard. And of course, a lot of NGO partners, I can see a few of them here, who already have a lot of experience in this field. They are also going to partner in this regard. And there is no gainsaying this fact that the way forward is a blended module where, the online and the face-to-face come together.
Maya, I just wanted to come to you about this blended learning model. Is that something that you have had success with in the programs that you run with your foundation?
Yeah, we've done some amount of blended learning where we've used, for instance, we've used a platform by Cisco for training teachers, large scale, say about 300 teachers simultaneously in 6 different locations with one expert facilitator from, say, Bangalore, and then followed up with support. I just want to add that if we want to look at even blended learning models for Indian teachers, I'm talking about Indian teachers, I think we need to have support. Apart from technology, we need to have in-school support. I have found that teachers change in a sustainable way only when we provide adequate in-school support, coaching and mentoring. Because otherwise they learn an idea, because in the video also we saw this whole thing of, it shouldn't be theoretical, it should be practical. But I've seen a lot of teachers sometimes when they come for some of the training programs we run, and ours is all practical, for instance, everything that can be directly used in the classroom. But they often say, but this is theoretical, it won't work with us. But even when we show it, sometimes we even do demo classes with their students. And they say, yes, it works for you, but it won't work for us. So I think unless there's ongoing support in the classroom and hand-holding, it isn't always sustainable. And that's because we've not given that kind of in-school support when these teachers were training as teacher trainees when they were doing their D.Ed and B.Ed. So I think that is important, whether we are using technology, whether we're using blended learning models and so on. I think in-school support is mandatory, is vital.
Okay, thank you. And that's an interesting point, and that actually answers, it addresses one of the questions that somebody's asked here, which is looking at what measures we can take to make MOOCs, they've referred to, but any of these online courses available to teachers, and also keep them motivated at the same time. And perhaps that in-school support is one of the ways to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry.
I think with MOOCs, if there's just 1 or 2 teachers trained to become effective coaches and mentors who can then support other teachers in their school. I think it just spreads the culture of learning. So, and then they will be able to access materials from MOOCs and other online resources very well.
I have a point.
Oh, it's working.
I'm sorry. MOOC is a very great model it is working around, but the management, whether it is government or the school management, has to be very supportive of it. Like she also talked, incentivizing the models. How do we recognize the learning through MOOC model by the teachers, and how is it adopted, and how is it propagated around? That also works far better.
What Maya said, support in school for even blended learning. But I think there is something more fundamental in my view for any teacher to use the plethora of activities and so on, which is the ability to sort of question and critically look at something that's available to see how she or he should adapt it to their situation. I think it can't be a direct replication like one of the teachers said. I want practical techniques which I can directly replicate.
Yeah.
That's a bit problematic.
Absolutely.
Because they will need to question, they will need to see what of it works, what of it doesn't. Once you get that ability, discerning ability, call it what, critical thinking maybe or whatever, then you are sort of on your own way of path to development. But if you are waiting for magic or techniques that will work wonders for you as it is, then there is a danger. I had a student who worked on a small dissertation who looked at TESS India materials, online materials. There's plenty of it. She was an English teacher. And she worked for more than 3 months to sort of take what's relevant and adapted it, modified it. And then she said, oh, it's wonderful because I did this. And then if you have to tell it to another teacher about it, she said, go and you try out your own ways of working with it. It can't be one solution for everybody. Each one has to work it out. So that ability, I think, with all these materials that are online, that has to be given probably, as he said, in that blended approach. While the face-to-face thing is going on, I think we need to focus on this ability. There could be a MOOC on that.
Yeah, true.
Did you want to say something, Maya?
No, I agree with, I think that discerning critical thinking ability is absolutely vital. It's not just sort of transplanting something from the workshop into your classroom at all. Absolutely.
I absolutely see what you're saying, Rama, but I just think it's interesting here. There was some evidence I was reading a couple of days ago which suggested that the teacher education programs which are the most specific and bring in specific tasks that are tied to the curriculum that teachers can do in the classroom, they are the ones that tend to have the biggest effect on learning outcomes for the students. But the question is always, if you make it so that the teachers are just basically, they're just transmitting something that somebody else has set up for them to do, in the longer term, their skills are not being developed, perhaps. Okay, so that takes us on to another question, and this has come up in a couple of questions people are asking. How do we know whether the funding that has been spent on all of these programs has been worthwhile? Talking about, they've mentioned RMSA, SSA, other government bodies investing a lot in teacher education. And that comes back to this question that's just starting to come up now about evaluation. So how do we evaluate whether or not teacher education programs are worthwhile and successful?
See, whether the funding is working or not is itself a $1 million question. So, point is that we are quite concerned with this. Learning outcomes as a kind of policy decision has already been notified now. You all might be aware. So, the next big challenge is to teach teachers how to evaluate also. That also needs to be a kind of scientific, designed in a scientific manner. The major funding under SSA and RMSA, in fact, the government flagship programs for school education, almost more than 80% goes into salaries. So very little bit is left for actually other activities, which includes in-service training. So right now the concern is, and we are in fact grappling with it on right now in fact, is how to sort of focus the funding that is available under RMSA and SSA to ensure that the diets become the focus of in-service training in a district, and the BRCs, the block resources and the cluster resources, they all somehow or the other get tied up into a diet-led program for in-service teaching. Now, it is just a question of, it is not a question of pumping in more money. It is a question of managing whatever is available in a slightly better manner so that, you know, you get the desired results. That teacher training doesn't happen because somebody has some kind of objective or some kind of a budget or financial constraints that this much has to be spent on teacher training or these many training programs have to be done, that it really results in something. So we are quite conscious of that, and in fact, I would say that we are discussing this at the right time because for the past couple of months, this is all that has been happening in government. We are trying to just work out how exactly to get a better bang out of whatever buck we are spending.
May I just add it? I think we should look at it in a different way. Like if you think of a fund, who is intending to do it? How serious is the management about this kind of a funding? How best the things are used? I am not able to stop to give an example. If the chief guest permits, I would like to give an example. I was told that the moment he became the education minister, he collected a few of the school leaders and then went to some Chhattisgarh region. I don't know whether it is true or not. And he packed them around for a week's time and without mobile connections, without anybody's connection, and then made them realize that he is very serious about some improvement in the school system. I actually happened to dash with those teachers, and then they said that from then onwards, the receptivity amongst the teachers about the development program has started circulating very high. The gradual development amongst the teachers that I want to develop, I want to contribute. Yes, the management also wants it to do. The whole cycle, seriousness in the whole of the cycle is much more important. So if you just think of from an outside point of view, whether the fund amount is yielding or not, I think we don't get anything out of it. The seriousness around this factor has to be thought about. Sir has also made a point that 80% is left is used for the manpower engagement. In a human resource mechanism, this is the game. The majority is always spent on the manpower who has to give it back. And if we just say our intentions, that this is the intention with which we want this to happen, it will happen. Maya also said that the positivity, how much positivity we feed inside, that is also much more important.
Incidentally, I just wanted to sort of comment. Chhattisgarh is a very good example. In fact, they are coming out of a lot of serious issues with education, and they are also going to pilot the MHRD's program for giving a tablet, which is going to ensure a lot of things, attendance and maybe even study material, a lot of those kind of things, you know. So you mentioned Chhattisgarh, but Chhattisgarh is going to work wonders in the next couple of months.
Okay, so sorry, just to jump in. So we're just talking about evaluation and how we can measure the value and of the money and funds and resources and time that's being put in. You've mentioned about looking at whether things are happening when they're supposed to happen, looking at how many people are coming for the training, how many people are actually there. But how do we measure the quality? How do we know whether it's good quality teacher education that's happening?
I think from my experience working with teachers for several years, I think if you want to look at evaluating any kind of teacher education program, in-service training program, I think you have to be able to see what happens in the classroom. does it change teacher behavior and teacher practice in the classroom? I think that's the first step. It's not the only step. I think that then we have to see, so is teacher behavior changing in the classroom? People need to be able to record it. Maybe people going in to observe and check, taking a sampling of teachers from across a certain geographical area. Then we've got to look at, is student behavior changing as a consequence of teacher behavior changing in the classroom, which means that our teachers, our students participating, asking questions, discussing amongst themselves, connect, which is in terms of on-task behavior. And then finally, we should, of course, look at our students learning effectively. But a lot of times, I think there's this danger of looking at student learning outcomes immediately. It will not happen. I think teacher behavior has to change first, and then student behavior in the classroom. And from that, eventually students will learn. If they're more engaged in the classroom, they will be obviously learning better, and therefore the student outcomes would be better, I think.
Point yes, on this. Apart from giving punishments when we evaluate teachers, we can point out the good teachers' practices and appreciate, encourage them. Not only the headmistress, the higher officials, whoever it is in the hierarchy. They can come visit the classrooms and they can appreciate the good teachers so that others will get this. I tried this in my school and it worked out. Without giving negative remarks, I encourage teachers to observe other good teachers' classrooms. That's it. That too, the observation already informed. The teachers have to invite us to the classroom. The head teacher with other two teachers, we go observe their classroom. We analyze what are the good things happened in the classroom, what could be done. So these are the things we should involve. Then only the teacher education things will be inside the classroom.
Another point, I agree with Maya and what Kalpana have said. I think there has to be a lot of self-evaluation as well by teachers. Apart from, of course, interaction and student learning, which is very, very crucial, the teacher also should become more and more reflective about why something is going on the way it's going on, why it isn't, and so on. I think reflection, I put my focus on. So teachers' reflective ability, maybe call it that. So that also is very important according to me. Just another thing, I see something like an immediate outcome evaluation and also a little long-term. So projects which are funded, because there's a lot of money put into it, I would also ask the question of sustainability. What is the kind of impact this project has had on the teachers, school system, whatever, even students, after the project is completed? Maybe 3 years later, 5 years later, because we are looking at something that's long-lasting. It's not something that I want to see today and forget about it when the project is finished. So I think sustainability, we call it in evaluation terms, tracer studies. So we need to do more tracer studies to see how far the teacher and the system and schools are continuing with that kind of an approach much after the project's life is over.
As a trainer, I just wanted to have an idea. Rather, I just feel that it is the satisfaction of the trainee which emanates his value addition. If I can take some kind of an opinion here, what impresses you, what satisfies you in a teacher training? Is it the content? How many people don't like it? Okay. Techniques? Methodology? Okay. Continuity of the availability of the trainer? Yeah, it is not dependency on the teacher. It is the technique to handle. As it comes to the behavioral aspect, is it the technique of the behavior which is more important, or technique on delivery of the content? Delivery of the content. I think these are the issues which actually gives us the reflection, and we can make out whether the training has added value or not.
Yeah. And also, this makes me think, it's very interesting. We were talking earlier with another colleague about teachers that we remember and how a good teacher, everybody, we all remember our best teachers, but perhaps there's something also there about teacher educators. We probably also all remember the best teacher educators that we had when we were training to be teachers. So they have their similarities there. There needs to be a connection between the people delivering the training and the teachers themselves. Okay, back to quality as well, or just carrying on with quality. This is a question for you, Mr. Awathi, which I now have to find. Sorry. There was a question around the quality of teacher education institutions across the country. So I wondered if you had something to say about that.
Yeah, it never misses, this kind of question. The moment NCT is involved, somehow. Well, anyway, we are acutely conscious of this fact that the 21 or so years of existence of this organization, what has it done to teacher quality? What has it done to the quality of teachers that are going into the school education system? Well, I would not like to answer that at the moment, but I would only like to inform and we are putting in place a system of accreditation and ranking of institutions, which was hitherto a very, very wishy-washy affair. And the rankings were only between the institution which was doing the ranking and the subject institution. The public at large couldn't care less. They were, the seats would be filled up on entirely, considerations of geography, maybe availability, maybe the kind of marketing that a particular management would be doing. So that has resulted in a certain quote-unquote, well, not exactly very happy quality. So what is on the anvil right now is that we are putting in place a accreditation system which will have good practices from all over the world, which will use technology extensively. In fact, almost a kind of war room is going to be put in, established, where 2 or 3 days of video recordings of classroom transactions, student behavior, proctored tests for figuring out how much the students are learning in classes. Madam has been discussing about pre-service, so that is what is on the anvil. Now, as far as ranking is concerned, we are going to cull out some maybe 1,000 as a kind of catchment, from where we'll probably rank 50 to 100 and maybe have a bespoke policy set for them to expand and to flourish. So as far as quality is concerned, right now you see the numbers are already in place. We have some 19 lakh seats available in the teacher education sector, which is far more than what the country needs on a year-on-year basis. Even if you do a back-of-envelope calculation, there are about 9 million teachers with an attrition rate of about 3%. And with some growth thrown in, you don't need more than 3 lakh teachers. And the kind of seats or the capacity that is available in the sector, even with a 50% kind of seats being filled up, you still have far more than what you need. So quality obviously is now a major issue, because as we want to sort of progress further, we want to take up on PISA also, that challenge. So, right now, it is not the numbers, it is quality that is bothering the government. So we are going to see a lot of issues and a lot of policy in this regard. We have already a lot of policy is in place, but the implementation of that in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Interesting that you mentioned PISA. I've again been doing some reading and looking at the education systems which perform the best according to PISA results, which is one way of measuring them. And one of the things that comes out quite strongly is something that's come up earlier in the discussion around in-school support and seeing the pre-service training as being one step in the teacher's journey. So is there anything anyone else wanted to say, but maybe adding on to what Mr. Asu said about how we can perhaps strengthen that in-school support that teachers get after that pre-service? Not necessarily going out for training, but in school, as you've been talking about.
May I? Sorry, you want to say? I want to share with you something we've been doing in Karnataka in 2 districts, 2 northern districts of Karnataka, educationally backward districts of Karnataka, where we're working with the head teacher as well as one senior teacher in the school, where we're training them on a 150-hour program, which is on, we call it Coaching for School Success. And through that, we're also tracking how other teachers in the school are changing on account of these 2 teachers in the school having been trained to become coaches and mentors. And what we found, because we did a baseline survey, we observed all the teachers, how they're teaching, including these 2 selected people. And then we did an endline observation of teachers also, all the teachers. And we saw that because of those 2 people having been trained, they were perhaps change agents for other teachers, other colleagues within the school. Each school had about 10 teachers. They're small schools. They're not, government schools are not very big, especially rural schools. But we found that the change was happening because you're sort of, helping 2 people become change agents within the school system. And we were able to track better teaching practices in the course of 1 year. But of course, we need to see how it needs to be sustained. But that's one thing. So I think in-school support is absolutely vital for all teachers, but particularly I think teachers in India, because we've never had enough support even in our pre-service days.
I'm actually going to suggest that we just move on a second. We've only got a few minutes left, and I'm monitoring the questions as they come in, so I've been feeding them in as we've been talking. There's a couple of questions that have come up here that I just want to get to before we finish. One is around attracting talent to the teaching profession. There's a couple of questions around that. There's also a couple of questions around the perception of teaching and how we can improve the perception of teaching as a profession. So I wondered if anybody had any comments on...
Maybe. See, the issue of attracting talent to the teaching profession, I think the system has not really marketed itself well, because you see what exactly is happening. Let me just give you a few facts and figures. Person passing out of some middle level B category engineering institute would be lucky to get a job which gives him 30 or 35,000 rupees a month in the beginning. Maybe later on he moves on to bigger things. But a teacher certainly gets more than that right in the beginning. Apart from that, you have stability, you have a relatively stress-free existence, and especially for the ladies, you know, it's a... So the stress levels are maybe... So the point is that it should be a very attractive profession for the female gender, for the simple reason that it is also. And we have not been able to sort of market ourselves, this profession, well enough to put it as a very viable career option. And that we hope to correct in some time to come.
I think we should ask the audience if they agree.
I can hear from the muttering. I'm not sure if everybody does agree.
I just have a small sentence to say. Around 50 teachers were in a training. I just asked them, what is more strenuous? And the conclusion was like this. Getting caught in CBI probably is far better than getting caught by the students. This is the response.
Okay. I think I think what I'm going to do, actually, I'm conscious that not everybody has access to Slido on their phone, and I just thought we'd take just 2 questions from the audience. If anyone's got any burning questions that either haven't been answered during the discussion or because you haven't had access to the platform, do you need to get the mic? Okay, has anybody got any questions? We've got time for 2 before we move on to the next area.
Do you want just questions? Because I actually have a couple of comments. If you would like to switch on to questions, and I'll wait. Or comments, okay.
Comments? That's fine.
Yeah. See, I have been hearing the panel talk about self-development, reflection by teachers, accessing materials and so on. That happens if 2 things happen. When teachers feel that they have esteem, they have respect, they are motivated, and number 2, that there is a defined growth path, right? Now, if you do not, today teaching profession is not the most esteemed profession in the country. It is a stopgap profession or a profession that you got by default because you cannot do better. I think the single most thing that we need to do for any development to happen is to put it on the pedestal that it enjoyed when I was a young kid. And that's the most important thing that we need to work towards perceptionally in branding, in being able to showcase not with awards and recognition and appreciation, which is more frequent, and also showing how they've been a ladder to the success of the biggies that we see, the top 100 in the Forbes list, right? That's a very critical aspect that needs to be focused upon by individual schools, be in the private sector or by government. The second most important thing is the career pathway. Now, when you look at diet or cluster coordinators, these are education administrators of sort. Most of the time, they're contract consultants. Now, there's far more investment going into them than it's going to teachers, who are going to be far more stable in the system. Where is a primary teacher who is being educated to become a policy maker or administrator in a state system or in a central system, right? Now, why is that career planning not part of the CDPO and be the focus? If these 2 things are put as a focus to do, and I think a lot of corollary in terms of motivation and capacity building would happen automatically. We have brilliant people who just don't see the value of using their brilliance in the pathway that they have chosen.
Any comments back on that?
Totally agree with what you're saying, I think. I was going to make a comment similar to that. If only, I'm just trying to, give a little detail about what you said. If only we are directorates of education and so on, school systems had a kind of, pathways where at each level the person's expertise is acknowledged and paid for. So we don't have that system here, except that when you finish some 10 years, 20 years, you get a promotion, but I don't know about, like what a teacher becomes, except the teacher becomes a headmistress or head teacher, which is where one in 100 or I don't know, very rare. So I think the British Council, I really like that system of professional development path, where framework. But the more important thing is to acknowledge it and pay a kind of increased salary. If you're a mentor, not just a teacher, then you have to have that's a different cadre and you have to be paid for it. And then you are an expert teacher and so on. I think then you are also professionalizing the profession. We have not professionalized teaching so far, I think. So once that's done, I think teachers will sort of come running towards it. One flip side kind of comment. I think if you can get Amir Khan or somebody to sort of do an ad on the TV to say how glamorous teaching is, then I think the job will be done.
Is it glamorous, Rama?
Autonomy for the teachers?
Autonomy, yeah, but then I'm talking about how to attract the best minds.
Improving the image of the teacher.
Yeah. That's right.
I just want to respond to the colleague who was just speaking about putting teachers on a pedestal. I don't know if it should be about that. I personally think it should be about just helping people recognize teaching is an extremely important job in our country, particularly with a young population. It's a very complex job, and that it's an exciting job. No 2 days are alike. And I think there are a lot of young people who would be interested in doing something socially meaningful. And teaching is not so badly paid either. It is a decently paid job in today's world. So, and I always tell teachers, do you think good teaching gets you better pay, or does better pay get you good teachers? I would think it's the former. Good teaching will get you better pay.
I do disagree with you. From my personal experience, I might not have got recognition from my officials, but the job satisfaction, the label student's favorite teacher, and the parents' support, the community support I have got is more than any award I can say. So this thing, I respond to you from my personal experience as a teacher for 20 years plus.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to, in a moment, just to prepare you, I'm going to ask you for your top priority for teacher education. We're going to take one more question before we get to that. We've got one in the front.
My question is related to the professional development. We were talking about the several constraints at the administrative level and all. My question is, does that stop me from developing myself? So if there are lack of resources, why not to create resources at your own level? That is what I personally do at my school level also. So I get the technical support from the mobile, from the internet, and well, if I need some, that is a need analysis kind of the classroom. I know my learners, I know their needs, and I know the way I have to tackle them. So if there is a lack of resources, then I do believe in creating resources myself instead of looking for any outside support. And that's truly working. And I mean, that should be there for almost all the teachers. If you are dedicated to your profession, why not to create resources on your own level? I would just like to share one story with you, a very small story. That, well, I was looking in YouTube about a chapter in class 12th. And then I couldn't find any sufficient material, a good material over there. So I just created an audio file of my own of that chapter and shared with all the students of my class on WhatsApp group. And that was really good, and that was really helpful to them. So my advice is like, fine, there could be constraints, but then it's up to you whether you want to develop yourself or not. So if you don't find resources, create resources on your own level, and that will truly work in most of the situations. Thank you.
Much for that. Yep.
Point. What you said is the hard truth. But there is one more better truth in it, that the stroke of a principal's pen or an administrator can spoil all the games. I have seen it happening. I am in the administration. I have seen the bad things happening because of the limited ideas of the administrators around.
Okay. I think what I like about your point, though, is that idea that there's a responsibility across all the different groups for teacher education. It's not about the top. It's not about teachers. It's not about head teachers. It's everybody together taking responsibility. Okay, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to finish. The panel speakers will all be around afterwards for questions and answers. Can I just ask you very quickly, one sentence from each of you, what is your top priority for teacher education in the next few years? What do you, or if not for you, what do you think should be the top priority for teacher education in India?
Quality.
A lot of teacher-led action research, classroom-based action research.
Teachers using technology.
Autonomy for the teachers. Complete autonomy.
My priority would be, I think there needs to be imagination and some risk-taking in terms of teacher education. Look for alternative modes of getting qualified teacher status. I think that's something our country needs to look at.
Great. Thank you so much to all of you for a great discussion. Thank you very much.